It's a rare condition this day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page. And love and tradition of the grand design.
Welcome back to the channel, as today we continue my deep dive series, this time looking at the Chicago Bears. We're going to be looking at the coaching staff, the scheme, the roster, and then at the end I'm going to give you my predictions for the Chicago Bears in 2023. But what's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So go ahead, become bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content as always. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that nice, beautiful football discourse. I look forward to hearing and responding to some y'all. But I will be gone from Monday to Friday. So today to Friday, I'm going camping. But I have videos prepared throughout the week for y'all. As Wednesday, you're going to be getting my next edition into the 2024 NFL draft class as we look at the running backs. And then I will have a deep dive series video for y'all Friday. It's a team that I'm pretty confident aren't going to make any big moves from the time I'm gone, but I guess we'll see. But let's go ahead and get into the Chicago Bears, starting with the coaching staff, as now going into year 2 with Matt Eberflus and company. I think we're going to see a bit more, because if you remember Matt Eberflus, at least during his time in Indianapolis as a defensive coordinator, his scheme was very vanilla to start off. And then year 2, he started just incorporating all kinds of different stuff. But for all intents and purposes, this is the guy that worked under Rod Marinelli. This is an even front 4-3 base that's going to be playing with a lot of zone. That's what I fully expect. But I mean, he is a cat that has dabbled and changed things before, so I mean, I think he's up for, I guess, adaptation. That's not the word I'm looking for. He's willing to adapt his scheme if he needs to, mainly the coverage scheme. But this is a team that, when we looked at that Colts team from year 1 under Eberflus as DC to year 2 incorporated a lot more like inverted cover 2. We saw a cover 3 match buzz and stuff of that nature. And I think really, because I mean, this is a team, if you look at the secondary, a lot of these guys are year 2 players or year 3 players outside of like Tyreek Stevenson. So I do expect a little bit of an expansion on the playbook when it comes to the DC here. Alan Williams, he's going to be doing whatever Eberflus wants him to do. He worked as the DB coach under Eberflus with the Indianapolis Colts. But let's talk about the offense, because this is very interesting considering the quarterback they have in Justin Fields, and we'll talk about him a little bit more when we get to the roster. But he was hired along with Matt Eberflus and Alan Williams. He was formerly a quarterbacks coach under Packers Matt LaFleur's. I always get Matt and Mike confused, so I wanted to make sure I got that one right. So schematically, hey, it's wide zone blocking scheme, baby, with some twists and turns. But wide zone blocking scheme mainly influenced by Kyle Shanahan, who Matt LaFleur's worked with. But the interesting thing, what we saw in parts last season, was he dipped into a little bit of Arthur Smith. So we saw like some inside and split zones. We saw the occasional duos. So this is a bit more, I don't want to say more complex, but there's a bit more going on than just a traditional wide zone blocking scheme. With the wheels he had with Justin Fields, he was like, hey, let's incorporate a lot more play action and a lot more RPOs. And honestly, it was effective. I think the offense is going to be generally good. So I guess let's go ahead and talk about the roster, because there's a lot to talk about there. But first, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is currently one of the most premier fantasy betting apps, and they got a best ball tournament with $15 million in cash prizes. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code Broshmo, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Remember, use promo code Broshmo when you sign up, and they will match that first deposit up to $100. I've been having a fun time with Underdog Fantasy as they got Best Ball Mania going on currently, but they have a whole lot of other stuff, so it's not just of football. But as always, bet responsibly, my friends. Let's talk about this offense, and I guess let's go ahead and roll into the starters, because of course we got to start with Justin Fields. And I know a lot of y'all are gonna look at that offensive rank, oh, top 11 to 15, what the hell? And it's like, that's what I think Justin Fields brings to this roster, especially now in another year as a full-time starter. I think it's gonna be good. Listen, I get it. Like we all understand what Justin Fields brings to the table athletically and as a runner, and that helps tenfold with this offense. I mean, in today's game, a mobile quarterback does just so much for your offense. I mean, we've seen with Patrick Mahomes. Granted, Patrick Mahomes also has a god arm. Jalen Hurts, that big step up. A big part of that offense was the RPO and how successful they were through that. So, like Fields, I mean, I think we saw last year best running quarterback in the league, and I think they're gonna stick with that. But however, I will say, I think he's gonna grow as a passer. I was very high on Justin Fields coming into the 2021 NFL draft. And like I understood what his weakness is. Like, okay, played behind a very good offensive line. He had very good playmakers. So he was afforded to be a bit more conservative with the football. I thought he was very much like a 1 to 2 read guy before maybe he would like tuck it and run, but he wasn't like terrible, that this wasn't a guy that was constantly tucking in and running. But he was someone who under pressure wasn't that good. And when we look at him last season, like under pressure, he was pretty bad. He was pretty awful. As you'd see that turnover worthy play rate go up through the roof. We would see the overthrows and just the inconsistencies on where he wanted to throw the football. Gets pressure, he tries to chuck it downfield, or at least like 15 yards or further, and just putting the ball in danger's way. But he was a lot better when the pocket was kept clean, and this offensive line, I think, did get better. I'm a big fan of the addition of Nate Davis, and I'll get to him in a second, because like when I talk about Justin Fields needs to grow as a passer, I mean, this guy's time to throw was the highest in the league. When you look at his turnover-worthy plays per game, the percentage, he was, third in the league at 4.4 per game. Not a great number. His average depth of throw wasn't too bad. Actually, it was actually fairly solid. But yeah, I mean, there's just aspects you want him to get better at. His adjusted completion percentage was really nothing to write home about. It was 71.7%, which was on par with guys like Taylor Heineke, Davis Mills. You had Deshaun Watson, who was bad last year. So, like, he does need to improve, but I think he can. He's got a very good arm. We know the upside. We know the potential of Justin Fields. And I think the additions offensively that the Bears made will help contribute to that next year of growth. Now, let's go ahead. Let's talk about the playmakers, because the biggest addition was they were holding that first overall pick, and they were talking, hey, Panthers, we want multiple first round picks. We want multiple day 2 picks. Matter of fact, let's sweep the pot. Can you throw a little, I don't know, DJ Moore in there? Like, that was the one piece of that trade that blew my mind the most. I love the addition of DJ Moore. They get a true number 1 receiver. And if you're like, DJ Moore ain't a number 1 receiver, you sleeping. DJ Moore has been fantastic for the Carolina Panthers. He is such a good after the catch target, along with as a vertical target. Like, he adds so many more dimensions to this offense. I love it. Now you got Darnell Mooney, who I think is probably going to be, I think if they go with 2 wide receiver sets, he'll be the other outside guy, or they'll play around with him and Chase Claypool. But when it comes to the slot, I think he's going to be the guy who is most likely man in the slot most of the time. If we look at last season, who was their leader in slot percentage? It was Darnell Mooney at 60.5%. So I think that's somewhere he's gonna be able to wreak havoc, because he's someone who's just he's a nice vertical speed target, and someone who can honestly like create separation underneath if you really need him to. But I mean, he's just so deadly downfield. He's kind of like, I mean, that they got Velus Jones because they're like, hey, we want more speedy downfield targets, blah blah blah. And so much so they actually drafted one this year, and Tyler Scott as well. But we'll get to those guys when we dive a little bit more into the receiving core. But Chase Claypool, man, like this is the guy, another big body but extremely fast, like very good athlete, who you think's clicked for him in year 1, and he's just kind of been meh since. But I think he could be as the 3rd target among this receiving core. I think that's somewhere he can thrive at. And maybe you're still regretting that you traded your early 2nd round pick for him. But I think this year, potentially, if things click with Fields, you're going to regret that a little bit less. That's a really strong starting 3 wide receivers, in my opinion. And then when we go to the actual roster here and look at their depth of receiver, they got St. Brown, solid receiver, working as a number 4, I think is perfect. They got Velus Jones, who I wasn't a big fan of, older guy, kind of a one-trick pony in terms of, hey, me run downfield real fast. He brings return capabilities, but I think they kind of upgraded that with Tyler Scott, who being a former running back, someone who's very good after the catch, likes to get physical, but needs a bit more polish as a receiver in terms of his route running, in terms of his ball skills, but good vertical target, brings that return capability. So it feels like those are the 6 guys they keep, but I'm not gonna lie, I feel like Velus Jones could be a guy that they maybe move to the practice squad or just cut ties with altogether. And I know people were like, oh, that's absolutely ridiculous, that sounds so silly. And it's like, he's not that good, in my opinion. Someone who actually kind of did all right for them, it was particularly solid last season, was in fact Dante Pettis here. So I think he's someone that I think they probably want to keep. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, because someone's got to go. Is it Jones? Is it St. Brown? I don't think they get rid of St. Brown. So I think Pettis has a good chance of being the other guy. In terms of someone else that might be able to be a long shot to stick the roster, or maybe a dark horse, like Joe Reed's just a really good special teamer. Probably doesn't. He's more of a journeyman at this point. If he can make it as a wide receiver 5 or 6 on a roster, that's great, because he's got return capabilities and whatnot, but kind of a long shot at this juncture. Now, looking more at the playmakers, Cole Kmet, finally things clicked for him. It seems like after 2 to 3 seasons in the league, tight ends, the things just click for tight ends. They turn into the players that they were drafted to be. And it looks like that's happened for Cole Kmet, as he played exceptionally well. He's a well-rounded player at the tight end position. So you like that. I like it. They bring in Robert Tonyan, who is honestly kind of a bit of the same. Really is. So I actually like those two. I like them at tight end 1 and tight end 2, looking more at the, like, honestly, they ain't got much. They ain't got much at tight end. Like, the name that sticks out most to me, not on the screen, but Chase Allen, formerly out of Iowa State, I believe. He was playing behind, who was the other cat? I'm pretty sure it was Chase Allen, and then can't remember who was the actual lead man at Iowa State. But he brings good size, kind of more of a red zone threat, good body, good catch radius. But yeah, no, I'm pretty I'd be pretty happy with that And before I actually talk about the run game, I want to talk about the offensive line, because obviously much of the production from the run game is going to come via how good is this offensive line, and I thought they made very good improvements. You liked what you saw in Braxton Jones in his rookie season as a fifth rounder. He produced way better than you expected, because I solely thought he was more of a developmental guy coming out of Southern Utah. Like, ridiculous length, 36-inch arms, but someone you could tell that needed more polish and more refinement to his body in an NFL weight room. Did not expect him to perform the way he did last season, and I think honestly sky's the limit with him. You're very happy with what you got in Braxton Jones. You move to the other tackle position. They draft Darnell Wright after moving down a spot or two. I think they moved down only one spot to get Darnell Wright to pass on Jalen Carter, but that is what it is. But they get Darnell Wright, who just very solid. You're not moving what side. Like, he's played guard, he's played on both sides of the line, but he had his breakout year last season at right tackle. Someone who is a much better mover than you'd expect for a man his size. And he's someone that's capable of just burying people in the run game, but it's what he brings as a pass protector. Like, you look at the Senior Bowl, where really his only loss at the Senior Bowl came against who's the Iowa State edge? Will McDonald. There we go. But he had plenty of wins against Will McDonald, and that was like the most explosive guy there. So I like what he can do with pass protection. Does he start? I think he probably, you draft him that high, he's probably going to start from day one. I think you can make a good case for Larry Borom, who I think deserves to be a starter. Like, it's weird. I know Chicago fans are a little in between on him, but I thought when called upon, he was much better than Riley Reif last year. I don't know why Riley Reif was really manning up. I know Borom, I think, got hurt, but wasn't able to get back in the starting lineup. But even then, I projected him to be a guard coming out. Move him to guard, and quite frankly, we might even see him at guard because of Taven Jenkins. Man can't stay healthy, but looked phenomenal going from tackle to guard last season. So you're hoping he can stay healthy, take that next step. But you have a guy like Larry Borom who could probably play guard. You have Lucas Patrick, a man of two first names, but he's kind of like a very good depth interior player. He can play guard, he can play center. He gives you good versatility there, which actually comes into play with I think Cody Whitehair, who I don't believe was very healthy last season either. Yeah, no, he only played in 12 games last season. So it's like having that depth is very, very important. Cody Whitehair now moves to center after guard started his career at center and was pretty darn solid. So I'm very excited, and they bring depth. So I'm very excited about all this. And I become more excited because I'm a mark for Nate freaking Davis, which this leads me to believe they will have some Arthur Smith style run concepts, which they did last year too. But like Nate Davis, he came from that. He's been under that. It's kind of a no-brainer signing then. And I love Nate Davis, man. He was someone who produced very well his rookie year. Then he kind of plateaued the last few seasons, but he's always been exceptionally solid. So you look at this offensive line and you ask, where are the weak links when it comes to the starters? Well, I guess Darnell Wright's kind of the obvious answer, just being a rookie. Taven Jenkins, can he stay healthy? But even then, there's guys behind him in like Larry Borom, Lucas Patrick, who come in and I think do a fine job of being plug and play. Or if we're going to go deeper on the roster here, or at least in terms of the depth chart, Alex Leatherwood, if he's ever starting, you're probably in trouble. He's a guy that needs time to develop, and I'm hoping Chicago gives him that time. Jatir Carter, who's at Southern, another developmental prospect there. So maybe, I don't know how much we'll actually see of him. I feel like he's kind of a long ways away, but someone that gives you, quite frankly, a player that can play every position on the offensive line. Can he play it well? That's why you're developing him. I was a big fan of Doug Kramer coming out of Illinois. I thought he was a bit of a lunger. He's kind of capped physically and athletically, but he's just a solid player. They get Lorenz Metz, who might make the roster here out of Cincinnati. I think there could be a case where, at the very least, he's on the practice squad, but he's got some upside to him. I really liked Kellen Diesch coming out of Arizona State. Stupid tall, but very quick hands, quick footwork, but does need to be a bit more polished as a pass protector because he suffers from the tall tackle syndrome where guys just get under your pads relatively easy because you're just a freaking skyscraper and they get leverage. And he was probably one of the worst guys at being able to dip and sink their hips to take on that leverage. But I'm very encouraged with this offensive line. I'm encouraged with the playmakers. I currently, going back to the offense, at running back, I have Khalil Herbert listed, who was a 6th rounder that I had a 3rd round grade on. I was like, I love this guy's low center of gravity. I love his build. I love his home run speed. Why doesn't he see the field more? He was constantly splitting with David Montgomery, which is fine, but he also got banged up a little bit last year, and I think he's probably going to be in the rotation there, and might as well talk about the rotation as they bring in Dante Foreman, who is fine. He is what he is. He's kind of a bigger bruiser guy. Roshan Johnson, drafted him. I'm kind of curious if we'll see much of him in general, just because kind of Foreman occupies his space. I would say Johnson probably has a bit softer hands, but it's not like he's doing anything spectacular in the passing game, but he's a big bruiser. I'm a big fan of Roshan Johnson. He had a very impressive day 1 at the Senior Bowl before I think he like broke a finger or something. And was like, yeah, I got a dip, guys. Sorry. So you got those guys there. They're all going to be kind of your fighting for your committee role. And then you have essentially like Travis Homer's probably has to make this roster. Like he is your scat back, your receiving back, someone who's going to be a very good receiver out of the backfield, someone who can pass protect. So he has to make the roster here. But then there's another question, because you have Tristan Ebner out of Baylor, who you grabbed a year prior, who's kind of the special teamer here. Like I believe he was the return man last season. But then again, I mean Velus Jones can do that. Tyler Scott can do that. Even Dante Pettis can do that. So, oh yeah, he's probably the guy that's getting cut. Okay. It's nice to know. But like this offense, I think is going to be good. Like, and they're going to have to make up for it because I think their defense is kind of going to not necessarily be a wash, but it's not going to be like freaking fantastic. It's not. That's just the case. Like, but I think the offense, it's going to be fun to watch. And I feel really good about Luke Getsy as a OC. I like a lot of the things he does. But yeah, I'm feeling really good about this offense. I think they made all the right moves. They have good depth at portions. I mean, even if you look at quarterback, yeah, it's kind of if Justin Fields gets hurt, like you're walking PJ Walker or Nathan Peterman out there, doesn't feel great. But I mean, you don't want to anticipate the quarterback getting hurt. I mean, for the most part, when you do these projections, you don't anticipate injury for the most part, unless it's like Terran Armstead, who is not going to play a full season. Go Fins. Fins up, baby. Fins up. Breaks my heart. Let's go ahead, move to the defense, as here are my defensive starters. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, I think it's going to be a heavy rotation on the defensive line in general. And I just kind of listed the guys that I think will be your snap leaders, and it becomes a bit more questionable when you look at the defensive interior, because I think there's a good chance we're gonna see 4 guys with like 400 to 500 snaps on the interior. I think that really might be the case. But I put here pass rush anyone, because I don't see it. If you're gonna tell me Travis Gibson, who's kind of like dudded the past couple of seasons, is going to come out here and have a breakout in a contract year, which I mean, It's what happens in contract years, though. People break out. I'm not going to buy it. They bring in DeMarcus Walker, who's more of a bigger body edge, who's been very solid for the Titans. Was the Titans last year? Was he on the Titans the year before? Let me check this real quick. So last year with the Titans, I know he ended up with like 32 pressures, 6 sacks, kind of playing a like over the 5 tag, just being that big end. All right, so he was with Houston the year before where he had 30 pressures, 2 sacks, and then Denver where he had honestly a solid year in 2020, 16 pressures, 5 sacks. So I think he's in on the rotation. This is gonna be a rotation with Gibson. Gibson having having 641 snaps. I think next you're gonna have a guy like DeMarcus Walker who will come in there with like 500 some snaps. Has never played over 500 snaps in his career, but I think this will be the year for him. But the guy that's going to be kind of eating time in there is going to be, let's pull up, my boy out of Miami, Ohio. Where you at? Dominique Robinson, who was what he flashed, but it was kind of few and far between. You kind of knew he was more of a developmental guy. I think he was a former tight end or wide receiver that moved to edge, and he played there with oh no, now that the 2023 draft's over, I forget names. There was the other Miami, Ohio pass rusher. He went to Kansas and was phenomenal. High motor guy. He's been undersized. He's got the predator hair. Can't think of his name. It's killing me. I gotta go look it up though. I just can't know. Kansas, Lonnie Phelps. There we go. So him and Lonnie Phelps were a hell of a duo. Like watching Dominique Robinson is what put me on to Lonnie Phelps. Then I found out he's going to Kansas. I was like, oh, why did he go to a bigger Power 5 school? And then Kansas just freaking had a phenomenal season. I loved that. But yeah, Dominique Robinson's going to be involved in this rotation. Those are your 3 guys in the rotation. I don't think you hear much of anyone else. Rasheem Green is more of a big body, versatile type that can play inside, that can play out. Terrell Lewis kind of flamed out with the Rams, right? This is Terrell Lewis, formerly of Alabama, correct? Drafted initially by the Rams. Alabama, yeah, drafted initially by the Rams. He kind of just flamed out, couldn't really produce, went on the field for the Rams. I don't really expect him to make the roster. DeAnthony Jones kind of lacks he lacks length. He's not necessarily athletically gifted. Kind of a long shot to make the roster. You could say the same thing about Jalen Harris out of Arizona, who I think's got really good get off, but very, very undeveloped in terms of just a pass rusher, how he plays the run. But someone who is just very gifted athletically. So yeah, that's what we're looking at in terms of pass rush. Not feeling great. We go to that interior, and we're going to be getting a huge rotation of you got Justin Jones, who really is probably going to move more to like a 3-tech penetrator type rather than I think they lined him up at nose at some points last season. Let's look at who led their nose snaps. Yeah, they did at points, but it was mainly Armand Watts, who I kind of liked back in the day. I think it was out of Akron. Is what it is. They bring in Andrew Billings, who really that's him. He is him. I think he's gonna be another guy with around 500 some snaps. I mean, of course, so is Justin Jones, but Andrew Billings, not necessarily great. You're not getting a pass rush upside with him, but he's a big boy, big space eater, very good against the run. But Gervon Dexter, because it sounds like they're gonna make Dexter kind of a penetrating 3-tech as well, but he's got the flexibility to kick inside. You saw that at Florida, but Florida mainly really asked him to kind of play run contain first. But someone who is very athletically gifted and physically gifted. So I expect a lot from Gervin Dexter. I think we're going to see him on the field a ton. And then you have Zach Pickens, who is more another penetrating type, who his high-end reps, some of the best in the class, but they were few and far between. Someone who you probably don't want on the field on rundowns. So, like, mainly you're looking at guys like Justin Jones, Andrew Billings, Gervon Dexter. Looking more at the depth there, they have Jalen Holmes, who I think is fine. Don't know if he makes a roster. Travis Bell, they drafted at Kennesaw State, who I think he's like just barely like 305, but tested very well. It's tested stupid strong. So someone who probably, even if he makes a roster, doesn't see the field relatively soon. So it's like the offensive line, or the defensive line, excuse me. It don't look good. It don't look good. And that's unfortunately, if you're not going to be able to pass rush effectively, it's gonna be like this this water drop in the pond effect, this ripple effect. That's what I'm looking for. Ripple effect, where you're going to see other positions not necessarily play poorly, but be put in more dire situations, especially when it comes to the passing game, when you're not able to get pressure, and those guys are going to have to cover for longer. That's just not fair, and it's going to cause their production to suffer. Moving to the linebacker position, they bring in TJ Edwards, who is like he's not the fastest guy. He's not the biggest guy, but he's just good. You look at him, he's like, just do good player. You won't find him at a position in the passing game, and he's a very effective run stuffer. Good player, good sign-in. They pair him up with Tremaine Edmonds, who is this long, big, freaky athlete, enforcer mentality. We saw the coverage, the splash plays and coverage last season, having a career year. It looks like everything started clicking with him. And of course, yes, he gets the big contract, but now you feel really excited about this linebacker core with those two players, which you could argue were top 15 linebackers in the league last season. And I'm all for it here. I'm very excited. Wish they had pass rush, but I am excited. Going to the depth at linebacker, Jack Sanborn, as a UDFA out of Wisconsin, played exceptionally well. I imagine he's the next guy in the the next linebacker up. Last season he played how many snaps? 330 snaps, and he just was very good, very solid, good tackler, good against the run, very good against the run, and did his part in pass protection or in coverage. They have Sterling Weatherford, who's more of like this former safety, lawn athlete, makes a move to linebacker coming into the NFL, probably still developing him. Noah Sewell, they drafted in the 5th. He's just an enforcer. He's a big enforcer. He's like Sola Sokoa, except for Sola Sokoa don't miss. But Noah Sewell, things you worry about him, like his coverage prowess is nothing. His tackling ability, he's not the surest of wrapper-uppers. He's a guy that wants to hit hard, and sometimes that'll result in just not finishing tackles, as we've seen through the course of his career at Oregon. Other guys, Keone Den is more of this didn't have the size to be an edge rusher, but he was very effective at Cal at that. Probably more of a special teamer, and I think there's a chance he makes the roster because of that. Micah Baskerville? This is a cat out of LSU, right? Yeah, I think he had a fine. Was it the NFLPA Bowl, I believe he was at? Let's pull this sucker up. I think he's fine. Does he make the roster? Oof, that's a different question entirely. All right, where did I have you at? Yeah, LSU, a bit undersized, was in the NFLPA Bowl. Yeah, let's read my notes on that. Baskerville looks like he can be a good sub-package linebacker in the NFL. He was all over the place in 7-on-7 drills. So that's what I had him down as some of the notes I had during the NFLPA Bowl. I had him as linebacker 36 last season as a priority UDFA. So could be an outside shot of him making the roster. But you feel really good about your starters at linebacker. You feel good about Jack Sanborn being that third guy there. You have Noah Sewell. That's fine. Develop him. You have Sterling Weatherford. That's fine. You're developing him. I couldn't tell you too much about Dylan Cole. So I'm not just going to speak out my butt and speak out of ignorance. Did he have... No, he was with Tennessee last year? Oh, excuse me. All right, let's see it. Dylan Cole. What did you do at Tennessee? Former Missouri State. Ooh, Eric Johnson was at Missouri State. Ooh, he actually played quite a bit for Tennessee last season. He's been in the league for a minute, initially being a UDFA out of the 2017 class. Last season was the most snaps he's seen since his rookie year. Yeah, I'm not encouraged by that. Just by looking at his analytics, I'm like, But then again, I mean, obviously you just want to use analytics as context to tape. So I'm not going to just speak ignorantly on him. Let's go ahead and move to the secondary. And I feel really good about this secondary. First off, Jalen Johnson, one of the most underrated corners in the league. He's exceptionally a solid, I'd say high-end number cornerback 2 to a mid to low-end cornerback 1. A guy that has really, like, since coming out of Utah, like, reeled back on that high-risk, high-reward mentality. And he just doesn't get blown up in coverage. He really just doesn't. 7 pass breakups last season. Allowed a completion rate of 58%. So he's just solid. And they draft Tyreek Stevenson, who I think does end up being the day one start. And I really liked this addition. I kind of had him as a fringe first rounder. I love the size. Out of my Hurricanes, by the way. Do you? I love the size, safety size. Hits like a safety too. He brings return capability. I don't think they're going to use him there. He had 2 muffs last year for the Hurricanes. Good length. Plays very physical. But for him, like, it was very, very similar to Jalen Johnson coming out of Utah. You could see guesswork. There was, at the Senior Bowl, you could see him try to guess where the receiver's going to go out of his break. And he was fortunate enough to get that right. Like, there was a lot of blown coverages by him at Miami last season. So someone coming in that has, like, very good athletic and physical tools that just kind of needs a bit more fine tuning. Do you throw him to the fire and be like, hey, Godspeed, good luck? Or do you start like Kendall Vildor there out on the outside, who is fine? Do you want him started? No. It's not particularly great. As a depth option, you feel really good about, but yeah, I think you might just throw the rookie in the fire at this point, because this allows Kyler Gordon to stay out in the slot where he was very productive last season. Looking at Kyler Gordon, played over 431 snaps in the slot, and I think that's where he was at his best, because when he was outside, that's where you were seeing like penalties and seeing him kind of being exposed a little bit. But I like Kyler Gordon in the slot a ton, and you look at those starters, they're a corner, and I feel really good about that, with like the outside man being Kendall Vildor. And we'll talk more about the depth in a minute, but then you look at the safety duo. Very good safety duo. You have Eddie Jackson, who can be the rangy center fielder if you need him to. He's got a nose for the football. And you pair him up with Jaquan Brisker, who is a monster around the line of scrimmage, who's a monster coming downhill, who's a monster in the box. He understands and recognizes route concepts and will jump on them. Like, I'm a big fan of Jaquan Brisker, and the pairing with Eddie Jackson is just beautiful. It really, really is. So you look at the secondary, it's like, man, the secondary, they're young, but they're encouraging. The linebacker core probably have one of the best linebacker duo in the NFL, but they're all let down by the pass rush. Looking at the depth there at this, or in the secondary, I should say, they drafted Terrell Smith out of Minnesota. I think that's fine. I thought he was a solid prospect. I don't know if he's anything more than a depth guy, maybe fringe starter, but he's going to be behind Vildor, so you feel good about that. Jalen Jones played quite a bit, converted safety to corner from Ole Miss. He's if you started, you're in trouble. They did bring in Michael Ojemudia out of Iowa, who's actually probably very familiar with zone. Like he preferably he's a zone heavy corner. Anywho, and then oh wow, they got Greg Stroman. He's more of a special teamer, but that's kind of interesting. They drafted Kendall Williamson out of Stanford, who's a very good great frame, good athletic build, developmental guy. Elijah Hicks, you probably don't want him to start. Like, he was fine when called upon in action, but he's more of a special teamer, and a really good one at that. Really good one. I was a huge fan of Hicks just in terms of what he brought as a special teamer, and that's typically mid to late day 3. That's where those guys go, guys that can make the team and be solid special teamers. He goes in the 7th. Adrian Colbert, his career is kind of on the down slope. They have some interesting UDFAs here that I want to talk about for a second. In Mason Clark, who mainly played slot at Tulane last season. Long shot to make the roster, but if you're looking to keep another slot corner, I couldn't tell you much about Josh Blackwell, but like I know for a fact Greg Stroman has played quite a bit in the slot. Or maybe you look at a guy like Marcel Clark or Mason Clark, or even Jalen Jones, who again former safety converted to corner. Braylon Tran, I believe, was out of Louisiana, like Lafayette, right? Or was it South Alabama? No, it was Louisiana, Lafayette. Like, fine. Undersized, as you can tell, like 5'10", 196. Not like terribly undersized, but a bit undersized. So he's a guy that's probably going to be playing deeper. Probably making the practice squad. But all in all, like, it goes back to what I think about this offense, or this defense. Pass rush, anyone? Can we get a pass rusher in sight? If not, then yeah, this defense is going to struggle at times. I think they're capable of stops, but they're going to struggle at times. I think they're going to struggle at least along the defensive line to stop the run when guys like Andrew Billings is out of the game. And then again, you're probably not taking him out of the game until it's passing down. So that's going to be very situational. I think we're going to see a deep rotation there on the defensive line, but I think it's going to, unfortunately, not even the guy, but a guy there that could be a consistent pass rushing threat is really going to hurt the other layers of the defense, the back 7, so to speak. So it's kind of tough. It's tough sauce. So yeah, I got him as a bottom unit. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about my predictions for your Chicago Bears, which, I mean, shoot, by the way, did y'all like that Family Matters intro? I'm hoping I don't get demonetized or copyright for using the theme song, but everyone loves Family Matters. Come on. So currently Vegas betting odds, they have them at 7.5 over under. You tell me right now, you pause the video, tell me where you would have it. Would you go with the over or the under? I'm curious. Put it in the comment section and then go ahead, hit play on the video, because here is my prediction for your Chicago Bears. The Bears I got them. Oh, I got to move this. Here we go. I got them at 6-12. You kind of knew this was coming. You were probably hoping that your Bears weren't another one of these 5-12 teams that I have listed, but I got them at 6-11. They actually have one of the easier schedules in the NFL. I think they have a top 10 easiest schedule in the NFL. I just don't think they're quite there yet, and I think they are going to be let down by aspects of their defense, unfortunately. If we want to look at the game by game, let's go ahead and do that. I got them with an opening win against Chicago or against Green Bay. They get the Bucks. I think people are sleeping on Bucks. Listen, I know that they're bad at the quarterback position, and I know that I listed them like they were the third team I did in this deep dive series. Because if you don't know how I do this deep dive series, it's not by power rankings or anything. I do it based on what the draft order would be at the end of the year, based on my projections. But I think Tampa could be much better than anticipated, especially if you think about it as in like Baker's gonna have a few good games. So for me, that's kind of a toss-up game, and it's in Tampa. Kansas City, I feel like you can pencil that as a loss. Denver's really good in September, so I think that might not be a loss. I'm pretty sure. I know last year was kind of weird for him with Russell Wilson and whatnot. But like for me, the Chicago Bears, like a 7.5 feels a bit lofty for me, so I kind of want to go with the under. But depending on how this offense clicks, and I'm very excited about this offense, it's just I feel like the pass rush is really going to let this team down. Like, yeah, they do. I don't think they're a team in contention, which is why I kind of steer away from that 7.5. But I don't think they're going to be like utterly horrible. That's the thing. I don't think they're going to be utterly horrible. They get Washington. I got them with a win over Washington, a win over Minnesota. I have them at 2-4 in the division. Do I have them losing to Detroit twice? I think that's where I have them losing. We have them losing to the Raiders because I think the Raiders with the healthy Jimmy G are going to be better than where I have them at like 5 wins. Losing to the Chargers, losing to the Saints, losing to the Panthers, which I know, man, some of y'all probably expected the Panthers to be a little higher on this list in my deep dive series, but I got some hopes and dreams for the Panthers. The Detroit Lions, we're gonna have to maybe rethink one of these. So I have them splitting with Minnesota, splitting with Green Bay. I have them losing in Detroit to the Lions. The thing is, their next game coming out of the bye is against the Detroit Lions at home. You look at that and it's like, oh, I kind of want to favor the Bears there, which you could, but Detroit was a very dangerous team down the stretch of the season. So for me, that's a bit more of a toss-up. I got them beating the Browns. Browns, one of the hardest teams to project how they will do next season. The Falcons. They do play the Falcons. I have them beating the Falcons. I have them beating the Cardinals as well, so they do well against bird teams. But the Cardinals are going to be interesting because will they play Kyler Murray at the back end of the year? Because I think Cardinals, you're not going to be in it. I think you're going to be bad. Then Kyler, do you really want to play Kyler Murray? Like, do you want to send him back out there in a lost season? I don't know. It's going to be a bit interesting. And then Green Bay, I have them winning at the end of the season in Lambeau. So, yeah, I feel like there's games here where I'm like, I'd be willing to give Chicago that game. I'm more willing to give the Bears a win over the Buccaneers than I am the Raiders, because I think the Raiders can be that good. So either way, you could say maybe Tampa, Las Vegas, one of those games ends up a win. So now we're talking potentially 8-9 team. I still think 8's a bit lofty. Like, I could see 7-10, but I think 6-11 feels a bit more right, but we'll see at the end of the year. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's what we do this series for. It's all about discussion and good old football discourse. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's it for the video. Do the YouTube thing. And as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.